Welcome to the Super Subs with
Andrew
and Harry, where we talk about anything and everything related to football. Today, Andrew and I are back from our holiday hiatus, holiday break. We are very much looking forward to talking about football again and happy to be with you, the listener, and hope you enjoy today's episode. It's going to be about something called the transfer window. What is the transfer window? You may have heard this referred to in other sports as called trades, or is described one player going back and forth between teams. So in football, this is called the transfer window, and when a player goes from one team to another, it's called being transferred. So before we dive into all the topics we're going to go over today, Andrew, what are you drinking? What do you have sipping on today?
Thanks, Harry. Yeah, happy to be back recording after a nice winter break.
Yeah.
Today I've got a Topo Chico margarita. These things are pretty good. Got hooked on them a little while ago. Yeah, I recommend it. It's a fun alternative to a beer or something like that. So, yeah, what do you got going?
I've got, and I haven't even unscrewed the cap yet. It's a Tropical Hazy IPA by Anchor. Anchor is a big brewing company located actually in San Francisco, California, and it is only a few blocks away from where I live in San Francisco. So I've visited their main headquarters, taken a look at those huge brew tanks, great brewing company. So if you're not from the Bay Area, if you're listening and you're outside of California, you may not have heard of Anchor, but they are an excellent beer. So I highly encourage you as a listener to check them out. Cheers, Andrew.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Welcome back, buddy.
All right, and we would be remiss not to mention the wonderful shirts that we're wearing. And if you're on YouTube, you can see Andrew pulled up the logo a little bit from his shirt, and I have a matching shirt on, and we're going matchy for this podcast. If you're listening on a platform where you're not seeing our faces right now and not visualizing these wonderful shirts we have on, I encourage you to go check us out on YouTube. You can also go to our website. It should also be linked in the description of this episode or the Super Subs main page on whatever podcast platform you're listening on. But this is just a shirt that actually our partners made for us over the Christmas break. It was kind of a Christmas gift to both of us. It was a surprise. We had no idea this was going to happen, but shout out to Carmen and Janae. Really incredible work putting this logo on the shirt. And there's a back. I'm not going to turn around. I'll swivel later maybe, but I'm not going to turn around. There is a back that says the Super Subs as well, and a little bit of typography on the back of the shirt. So excellent stuff. If you as the listener, you're interested in this shirt, definitely write in, message us on Instagram or email us or tweet at us. We have all of those mediums of communication. And if you like one of these shirts, definitely request it. And if there's enough requests, we will open these up for sale and maybe sell a few of these shirts. So definitely hop on the shirt train. Oh yeah. Cool.
Oh yeah.
So let's go right into it, Andrew. Let's talk about transfers. So right now, we are currently in what's called the transfer window. We are talking about what is the transfer window for this episode. And this isn't necessarily going to be about tactics or the game of football specifically, but it's going to be around a very important part of football, of what we know and we've come to know as fans, and what's very important for teams and clubs all over the world. So, Andrew, why don't you give us a little bit of an overview on what a transfer and what a transfer window is, and describe the different transfer windows there are.
Yeah, definitely. So just to kind of break down the terminology, Harry, you alluded to it earlier. Transfer for us Americans is just another way of saying a trade. So,
Yep.
We think about trades in MLB, NHL, NFL, etc. So we're just talking about trading players here.
Yep.
The window refers to the period of time in which those trades can happen. So you can't really trade all year long. That's not really a thing and not really allowed. Pretty much you just have two windows. So you have a winter window, which we are in right now. The winter window for English clubs opens on Sunday, January 1st. And then closes on Tuesday, January 31st. And it's also the case for other clubs in Europe as well, Scotland, Germany, and some women's teams as well. So that is a bit of a shorter window. The summer months is when it really pops off, and that's where you get all the juicy rumors, and you can really get down the rabbit hole on Twitter, Reddit, etc. But the summer window typically runs from mid-June to September 1st, and that's primarily where you see most of the big trades happening. So just kind of taking it from, a bird's eye view, 1,000 feet up, January is pretty much just quick fixes. It's for teams that are halfway through their season looking to get in maybe some more talent. Maybe they got some injuries and they need some replacements. They're really just looking to get through to the rest of the season and then into the summer months. Of course, I'm generalizing, but that's typically what you see. And the summer window is when you really see a lot of big trades happening. And that's where teams are doing all their preseason work, they're training, and they're getting ready for the upcoming season, whatever tournaments they're in. So that's where you see a lot of the activity happen. Also, it's just bigger and longer.
Yeah. Andrew, can you talk a little bit about why a transfer would happen? So we've heard a little bit about transfer windows. We'll go into exactly why transfers are so important in terms of the history of the game. But why do transfers happen? Why does a player even go from one team to another in the first place?
Yeah, so it can be a number of different things. Maybe the player wants a different opportunity. Maybe they want more playing time. They want a bigger club. Sometimes it's the club that's not happy with the player and they want to offload them. Sometimes it's the club saying, we really want you and we're willing to pay a lot of money for you. And sometimes, it's a loan. It can really run the gamut. So, or sometimes it's an investment. We can talk about that a little bit later when we talk about academies in a future episode. But players often will start really young in academies that are run in-house. There's some famous ones in Europe. Dortmund's got a really great one. A lot of really great ones in the UK. You've got Manchester United, Manchester City, Liverpool, etc. All have great academies. So they'll invest for a cheap price, build the players up, get a lot of great experience, and then maybe one day sell them. So
Got it.
That's kind of the gist of it. It's obviously a lot more nuanced, but that's kind of the game plan, how it all works.
Yeah. That sounds good.
Yeah. So Harry, we kind of touched on it a little bit. Can you walk us through the different types of transfers? So what options are there if a player wants to leave or if a club wants to sell a player?
Yeah. So during a transfer window, there's a few different ways that a player can go from one club or one team to another. Three main ways that we'll describe, and we'll get into a few different ways besides that, but these are the three main ones. So number one, and this is by far the most common transfer, maybe not the most common, I would say, but the most talked about way of transferring a player from one club to another is a permanent transfer, what's called a permanent transfer. And a permanent transfer means this is not a temporary move. This is one player going from one club to another with no intention of going back. And we'll talk about a little bit about a loan. Andrew will go into more details about that. And a loan, if you think about the word loan, it's exactly what you think it is. It's a certain number of months or years as defined over a period of time. A player is loaned from one club to another. But a permanent transfer is usually a player moving from one club to another for a certain price or fee. We're actually going to talk a little bit about what determines a player's price in just a bit, but the first method of transferring is one player going from one club to another for a price, and that player staying at the club they're going to permanently. So let's get into the next type of transfer, which is a free transfer. So when a player, just to wind it all back a little bit, zoom out a little bit, every player that plays for a professional club, whether you're at the highest tier of football in the UK, in Portugal, in Italy, even in the US, etc., every player has a contract that they're tied to. This is the same for a lot of sports, many sports, the NBA here, the NHL, etc. All of them have contracts that you're tied to as a player. Your agents usually negotiate these contracts, and these contracts are usually time-bound. So a player might have a 2-year contract, a 1-year contract. If you have a shorter contract, that usually means maybe you're more of a risk that the club is taking, and maybe they want you for the short term, but they don't necessarily want to lock you in for 4, 5, 6 years, like we see with some of these more expensive players. So players that have a lot of value and players that clubs want to keep around for a much longer period of time have contracts like 4 or 5 years, because it actually keeps their value higher. And we'll talk a little bit about that in just a couple topics as well. But once that contract actually runs out, so say Andrew Smith is a famous footballer, and he's a striker. Yeah. He's a striker for Dortmund, and he's about 26, 27, coming into the prime of his playing career, just smashing 70 goals a season, more than Haaland. And Andrew's contract actually comes up in February. So it's coming up, or maybe mid-January. Let's say it ends mid-January. Right now, at the time that we're recording this, it's mid-January. So Andrew's contract actually expires in a week. So he's free to leave the club after that. So when your contract expires as a player, you become what's called a free agent. So this is it's the same for all sports, really almost universally. When you're not bound to a club anymore, when you're not bound to a team, you can feel free to move to any kind of club. And the club that you used to be bound to under a contract has no say on whether they can demand a fee for you or whether they can keep you for longer, etc. So really, the only thing you have to know about free transfers is that, first of all, the club that's taking you in, that you're going to, doesn't have to pay a fee for you. It's a free transfer because you are a free agent, not bound to any club. So that's the difference between a permanent transfer with a fee associated to it, because you're usually under a contract and the club that receives you usually pretty much buys you out, pays a fee for you to come, versus if you run your contract out, you can go to any club that you want, and there's no prerequisites with your previous parent club that you have to talk through. So, Andrew, let's talk about loans. So that's the third main type of transfer. Why would someone do a loan? What is a loan? Give the listener a little bit more about what a loan is.
Loans are interesting. I'm trying to think of any other sports that I know that really do loan deals. So
not many,
loan
right?
Loan, essentially, like you put it, Harry, is just borrowing a player. So you have a player, they play for a team, they have a contract with that team, and they go to play for another team. They still have a contract with the main team, but the main team is saying, hey, we would like you to go, there are a number of reasons. We would like you to go get more play time. Yeah. We think you're good, but we want to get you some more playing time. Hey, it's not really working out so well right now. Let's send you to another team and hope that you can turn things around. Or maybe it's the player saying, I'm not really happy right now, and I'd like to go play for another team. It could be any reason, but typically loan deals are a year or less. Yeah. So a player will leave their parent club, go get traded, play for another team. Yeah. Typically 6 months to a season. Loans can end up either in the player returning back to their parent club, or it can include a clause in their contract that's negotiated where the club that they're loaned to can buy out that player if they like the player or if things are going really well.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's an interesting strategic move. You see it a lot with young players that big clubs are looking to develop them, but can't give them a lot of play time. So they'll send them out, or sometimes there's drama and teams don't get players don't get along with teams, or the style's not working. Yeah. Loans are really, really interesting.
And it seems like some clubs even would rather than buying a player to come to the club, they'd rather take on a loan because it's less risk. You're paying less money. So, for instance, and this is maybe not the best example, but Chelsea Football Club, a club in England, this season in the Premier League, we're talking right now, this is the winter transfer window that we're currently in, like Andrew described. January is the winter transfer window. Chelsea have gotten a player on loan from Atletico Madrid, who is a team in La Liga, which is the top division of the Spanish football division or leagues. And this player's name is João Felix. He's pretty much a young phenom, and they paid an exorbitant transfer fee or a loan fee for him just for actually 5 months, because the season only runs until I believe, end of May or early June because of the World Cup offsetting this Premier League season. But the fee was around 11 or 12 million, either euros or pounds or something like that. And that's just a crazy fee for a player. But it's because he's, one, so good. Number two, his value is so high because he's locked into a contract. He actually got his contract extended until 2027, so a year later. And then number three, Chelsea are in a pinch. They're in a bind because they don't have any really good forward players that are going to make that difference in games and score goals and be a dynamic just player that can drive through the defense and rip them apart and be that player that's the difference maker. So really, in this situation, we see Chelsea. It's not a full-on buy, a permanent transfer, because Chelsea probably don't have the money to afford João Felix. He'd probably go for about 120 to 140 million dollars. They just don't have the cash to splash. So they've went
already
for
spent
exactly
400 million or something like that under the new ownership. It's mind-blowing.
Yeah. And these numbers, if you're not very familiar with football finances and the amount of money that's being thrown around, it's just gotten exponentially higher and higher every year that we've seen players transferred from one team to another. So if these numbers sound at all high, they are absolutely high. This is an insane amount of money to pay for one player to go from one club to another. But think about it, even just 11 or 12 million euros or pounds is crazy just for 5 months for a player. And Chelsea would, I'm sure, much rather do that than pay the full price of $140 million. So it's just an interesting thing to think about for clubs, going for a loan versus a free transfer versus a permanent transfer. Let's go on in that case then to why transfers are important. We can quickly talk about that and then go to what determines a player's price. So, Andrew, give the listener a little bit of an insight. Now that the listener knows what the transfer window is, when it happens, and the different types of transfers, permanent, free, and loan, why do they even happen in the first place? What makes transfers important to the game of football, and why can't we do without transfers? Yeah. So I think, like any sport, trading is always meant to help your team get better. Yeah. Now, whether that's a short-term thing, like you alluded to with João Felix and Chelsea, where they just need to recover. They've been having kind of a very mediocre season. Yeah. So it could be a short-term thing. We just need to get winning again. Yep. And it could be a long-term thing. It could be we're looking to build up. We've got a project that's going to take 5 years. We think this player is going to be great in 5 years. It could be bringing in an older player with experience, someone that can really help provide leadership for younger players. Yeah. And oftentimes it's to fill holes or to bolster certain positions. Before that we recorded the podcast, we talked about Manchester City and how it seems like they have such deep squad depth in each position, and they just buy so many good players in each position. Yeah. But then, earlier this season, they bought Erling Haaland from Dortmund, who's a phenomenal Norwegian striker. And they didn't really have a great number 9 player, and we'll talk about numbers later. But number 9 is primarily a striker, an attacking player. They sold their number 9, Gabriel Jesus, to Arsenal, and they needed a real through-and-through striker. And so that's why they bought Erling Haaland to fill that hole. So at the end of the day, it's all about winning. Occasionally it's about marketing. Clubs will buy big players like El Nasser in Saudi Arabia buying Cristiano Ronaldo. Yeah, I think their Instagram followers went up by like tens or hundreds of millions. He's still a decent player, but marketing's a big thing. So all that aside, it's always to help the club, win, gain stock. Exactly, in one way or another, and I agree with you.
Yeah.
The team that Andrew and I support, Manchester United, a lot of the players that they bought over the years, some players were key. You could even think of them as being able to break into a certain market to gain more fans. So like Andrew said, there was a legendary player. He's incredible. He's an incredible midfielder called Ji-sung Park, and he's a Korean player, legend of Korea, played for the Korean national team, and legend of a player for Manchester United as well. But He's one of the most famous players out of Korea to ever play for Manchester United. And because of that fact, a lot of Korean fans today are Manchester United fans. So, and that doesn't stop even after the player leaves the club or retires. They'll always have that memory of that player that they grew up watching associated with that club, and they'll keep supporting Manchester United for years and years to come, even when that player doesn't play anymore. So it is a good move in the end for marketing.
Yeah.
Definitely. But I would say most of the times it's for the quality and the skill and the development of the player itself.
Yeah. So when I think marketing, I think obviously cold hard cash. So Harry, we talked a little bit about the crazy pricing that goes along with players. How does a player, can you walk us through, how does a player even get a price tag? Like what does that look like? What's that process?
Yeah, so pricing is actually really complicated in football transfers. And the reason I say that is because at the end of the day, what determines a player's price is really, it comes down to the necessity that the receiving club needs the player that they're looking for. So a player's price, I'll zoom out a little bit, bunch of different factors. Definitely you think about how talented they are, so their history and really their winning mentality and their win streak. They've done well for their current club. Their age, so you can't have someone that's too old. So obviously, as an athlete, just your body declines a little bit. You have to accept that. And once you get into your early to mid 30s, you really start to, your talent and your physicality start to drop off a little bit. Maybe the talent doesn't, but just the way that your body functions just starts to drop off. So really clubs are looking for, depending on how early stage, maybe 18, 19, maybe mid 20s, maybe late 20s, if you really want a star player. So depending on age, potential is a big one. So if you're a younger player, maybe 16, 17, you want to buy that player to develop them in your club because you've seen a little bit of a spark and you know that they're going to go on to do great things. But you're taking a gamble at that point for that player. Maybe you need someone in a specific position. So the club that Andrew and I support, Manchester United, for a long time we were missing what's called a defensive midfielder. And that's a player that sits in the middle of the field, right behind what's called the attacking midfielder, just pretty much roaming around and making interceptions and making sure they win the ball back. They protect the back line, the defense, and they pretty much connect the ball from the back line to the forwards or the midfielders just to make sure the play is smooth and you can go on to score a goal. So they're very a pivotal role there. And Manchester United finally got a defensive midfielder, a proper one, in a long time, after waiting for a long time. And that was a specific position they were looking for. And you can go on and on about calculating the price of a player, but ultimately, if the club that wants to buy really, really wants a specific player, the player really, really wants to go to that club that wants to buy them, and the club that wants to sell wants to see that player go, it's going to go through. And you can see there's certain situations where you can play hardball as well. Let's say there's a club that really wants to buy, that's a really rich club, and they have a lot of money, and they can throw money more and more and more at a player that they really want. You can see the club that is in a selling position say, hey, since the buying club has a bunch of money, let's just keep raising the price and let's play chicken. Let's see how far they're willing to go. We can raise it to 30, 40, 50 mil, 60, 70, 80 mil, and keep going and going until they finally reach a compromise. So at the end of the day, even if you have all of these factors, position, talent, age, potential, etc., all it really comes down to is that negotiation at the end. And then a lot of these transfers actually go to the deadline. So they go until, I believe it's actually 11 p.m. They don't do midnight anymore because of all these processing and paperwork and electronic stuff. So they'll go until 11 o'clock at the end of the month, and they'll try to get that paperwork in and the lawyers to sign everything. So it's pretty crazy. The players' pricing, we're not going to dive too deep into it. I think as the listener, what you should know is the prices that you see, they're exorbitant, but really they're decided by the necessity of a player in the end. So when you see these prices, they're just really an indicator, but they're not the exact truth of really how good of a player you might be getting. So let's go on to our last topic, Andrew. want to hear a little bit more about really some examples of record-breaking transfers and some players that have really raised the eyebrows in transfer history. So Andrew, why don't you talk about the top 3 transfers so far of all time? Obviously, someone's going to break the record in the future. This is not going to hold true for the next, I would say in 5 years, we're probably going to see the record broken again. In 10 years, we're going to see the record prices keep going up and up. Inflation, it's a recession. Who knows what's happening? The world is going crazy. But let's talk through the top 3. So give me the top 3 transfers in terms of price so far in history.
Yeah. And I think, so this was done prior to the World Cup. I'm not sure if Cristiano Ronaldo's transfer... Well, I don't know if it was
a free transfer, so technically it wasn't paid for. Yeah,
it doesn't count. Yeah, okay, yeah. Never mind. Scratch that. So at number 3, we've got Philippe Coutinho. For those of you that currently follow the Premier League, he plays for a team called Aston Villa, located in Birmingham. They're in Birmingham, right?
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah. But anyways, he used to play for Liverpool back in the day, and he was transferred for 170 million. To Barcelona, which is absolutely incredible.
Eye-watering prices.
Oh man, and unfortunately, he didn't live up to the hype. That's something you see with these big transfers. At number 2, we've got Kylian Mbappe at 186 million from Monaco in the French League, Ligue 1, to PSG, where he currently plays, Paris Saint-Germain, and he just renewed his contract. Massive contract.
Yeah.
For those of you that watch the World Cup, absolutely on fire. He did phenomenally well, and a great talent that we're sure to see a lot of in the future. And
absolutely.
Topping out at number 1 is the Brazilian himself, Neymar, 230 million from Barcelona to PSG to play alongside Kylian Mbappe and Leo Messi.
Yep.
So whether or not those players are worth the money, that's a whole different topic and definitely up for debate, but those are the record-breaking transfers.
You know what's funny, Andrew? So I remember listening to an interview before. There's this player named Rio Ferdinand. He's a center back. So a center back is the position, one of usually 2 or 3 players that sit right in front of the goalkeeper and really defend the last line of defense before the goalkeeper. And he had actually at the time an English record-breaking transfer fee from a English Premier League, so the highest league in England and the UK, from a team called Leeds, so Leeds United, to Manchester United, so the club that Andrew and I follow. I believe his transfer fee was 20 or 30 million. It was very high at that point, the highest either defender or the highest English player in history up until that point. And he goes to training the first day at Manchester United, and someone plays him a ball. So someone passes him a ball, just coming in red hot, just straight at his feet, and just whizzes it into his feet, and he bobbles it and stumbles, and his first touch is really bad. So pretty much meaning he doesn't receive the ball well, and it just doesn't go where he wants to. It kind of goes away from him, and then one of the players goes up to him and says, "Hey, 30 mil, huh?" It just pretty much just says his price in front of him and says like, "Oh, you're worth 30 mil." Pretty much goes in front of him. I obviously butchered the accent, but that being said, when you're a player, and I think this is what we're gonna close out on as well in terms of transfer window. What is the transfer window? What are transfers? When you're a player as well, you absolutely know how much you're getting transferred for. So the top players, I guarantee you, Neymar, Mbappe, Coutinho, are actually great examples, a top 3 of who lives up to their price and who does not.
Yeah.
So Coutinho, this guy coming from Liverpool, which is in the Premier League, and moving to Barcelona, a very famous team in the top Spanish league, was incredibly hyped. And he went to Barcelona and really just underperformed that hype. And a lot of the times as a player, when you move to a new club, you know exactly how much you're worth, how much you were paid for. The pressure of expectations riding on your shoulders is just so high that oftentimes you don't live up to it, right? So a lot of the times, I think as fans, it's good sometimes to step back and take a look and remember players are human too, and they they feel a lot of pressure, especially with social media nowadays. They're more visible than ever. And then Neymar and Mbappe, they absolutely lived up to their price tags, and they're performing, and they're incredibly skilled. So just a little story about even players themselves know their prices, and it's funny because we think about all these transfer rumors, and players are just in the thick of it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. So I think that was it for today. Andrew, any closing thoughts about transfers? I mean, what's on your mind as we are in the middle of this transfer window?
What's on my mind is that Manchester United needs another striker. Yeah, I absolutely love getting down the rabbit hole. Even if you're a casual fan, you can see transfer news on things like ESPNFC.com or BBC. It's a lot of fun to follow. Yep. It's very dramatic. And the more you get into the game, the more invested you get into the market. And don't worry too much about the winter transfer window if you're just listening to this, but pay attention to the summer transfer because there will be drama and it will be juicy.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I would say as well as closing remarks is that transfers are their own saga in itself. So if you follow a club and you really start to get invested in the club, you know exactly the weaknesses and the pain points that your team is suffering from, and you know what you need to fill those positions. Sometimes as a fan, you get so invested. I know myself, and I'm sure, I don't want to speak for Andrew, I'm sure Andrew feels the same way. Every day you're refreshing. Oh my God, are they coming to my team? Are they coming to my club? Someone dropped a rumor here. Is it true? Is it not? Can I fact check? So sometimes it's almost addicting to follow these transfer rumors. And,
it is, yeah.
And even a word of advice, if you're a fan really diving into it, at the end of the day, you can refresh, but when it comes true, it'll come true. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But it's fun if you want to. It's almost like a reality TV show. Does it happen? Does it not happen? So it's a fun time, and the transfer window, it's just good for clubs in general to develop clubs and to keep them more dynamic. They're not going to stay the same players. So that's a little bit about the transfer window, transfers for players, and hopefully you as a listener, you learned a little bit more, and you can talk to your friends about why transfers happen. So that was today's episode of the Super Subs with
Andrew
and Harry. So definitely don't miss our next episode. So we just got back. You might be listening to us on, I believe it's January, 19th is today. That's the day that the episode drops. And the next episode, next week, we're actually going to start to cover the basics of each position in football. So I think if you are a beginner to football, if you're a beginner to soccer, and you're just starting to listen to this podcast, or you stumbled upon this podcast, maybe someone referred it to you, the one thing that after the basic rules of football that you should really start to get to know are what are the different positions. You need to know who does what on the pitch. It might look like 10 guys besides the goalkeeper running around like headless chickens. If it looks like that to you right now, maybe learning the basics of each position in football will help a little bit. So we're excited to describe that in a little bit of detail, starting with the goalkeeper next week. So definitely don't miss out. But this is the Super Subs subbing out for now. Catch you on the next one.